I want to leave some money to charities when I die. Can I deduct the charitable contribution on my tax return?
Well, when you're dead, no, you can't deduct any charitable deduction as a dead person. You can only do that when you're still alive. So how does that work? So if you are charitable inclined, as we talked about earlier, there are actually different ways you can do charitable contribution efficiently, but not just cutting a check to charity. You can always do that. But you say, you know, I want to give $1,000 to a charity. But how can I do it efficiently more than just deducting on your income tax return? As you know, if you're taking a standard deduction, you will not be able to deduct any charitable giving whatsoever. So what do? There's some strategies I want to share with you. So you can look at one option is called the donor advised fund. This is probably one of the least utilized tools that's simple and very effective. So this is how it works. If you look at the diagram here, you are the donor, you're the person who wants to give the money to the charities, and you will give the money into the charitable fund. And then, of course, the fund gets invested within that environment and hopefully goes up. And most of the time, they're invested in mutual funds that for the broad market. Then, after that, you, as the advisor to this fund, you advise the fund as to where the money will go. That's why it's called donor advised fund. You can name different charities during your lifetime as you wish. Now, when you put the money into the donor advised fund, you get to deduct the charitable deduction on your income tax return. So if you are filing standard deduction, typically if you remember year-end planning when we talked about this, is that you can strategize by skipping every other year. So 1 year you can take a standard deduction. The next year you do an itemized deduction, and that's the year you will put money into the donor advised fund for the next 2 years, for example, and you can take a deduction the year you put it in. But the next 2 years, you can disperse the funds to your favorite charity from the donor advised fund. So that makes it more efficient from an income tax perspective and still meet your charitable goals. You can even take this up another notch by donating appreciated stocks and investments into the donor advised fund versus just cash. If I go back one step, you can see that you can either give cash or you can actually put in other assets. Other assets would be, say, you bought Apple stock when it was $50, now has gone up and split 7 different ways. So now you have appreciated stock, but you don't want to sell it because you have to pay capital gains tax. But if you donate that Apple stock into your donor advised fund, you will get the tax deduction at the market value. Of course, you don't have to pay any income tax, capital gains tax on that money. And the donor advised fund would take the full value. It would sell the Apple stock without paying any capital gains. It will invest in mutual funds. You'll be able to name the charity of your favorite charities to be able to receive the money each year. Now, you can also name a successor donor. So, for example, your children or your spouse or whomever you want. So at some point in time when you're not around anymore, that person can continue your charitable endeavor to give to different charities. And you can see that there are different examples of the charitable donor advised fund that's available. So Fidelity Charitable, Vanguard has a charitable fund, which is donor advised fund. Schwab has one, Wells Fargo has one. So I will highly recommend, if you work with your financial advisor, talk to your advisor regarding your desire to open a donor advised fund. If you don't have an advisor, all these different low-cost mutual fund companies have donor advised fund available, and it's very easy to use.